If you've been paying attention to eBay recently, you will have likely noticed that there's been a user on there that has been selling a ton of M1955s for a pretty good price, to be fair. We're talking like $150 to $100, and the guy had friggin' everything. Had like extra large, large, mediums, first pattern, second patterns, Okinawans, etc. And at that price, it's hard to beat. However, there is a bit of context that we need to take into account. All those flags have come from a movie prop company, which means that these were used as costumes in movies. I don't know which, but that means that they have been modified so the actors can wear them a bit more comfortably and not struggle as much with them as they would with original unmodified examples. This means that the ballistic nylon is still on the uppers. However, all of the plates have been taken out and they've been replaced with foam, which is a bit of a damper for your efforts if you want to actually go out and use it at a reenacting event, because first of all, they're going to be real squishy, which they shouldn't be, and they're just not going to look right, given that one of the defining elements of the M55 family of flak vests is the Doron plates these had on the inside. This one, to be fair, doesn't look too bad, at least from the front, but when you turn it around, you can very clearly tell that that's not how it should be looking. Now, spoiler alert, this is not the first flak I've gotten from that guy. I've actually got another one, which I've already repaired, a first pattern flak that has actually come out real nice. And I thought I would record how I go about, making the plates and installing them in one of these vests, so you guys can go out and do the same and potentially be able to use them for your kits without looking like the Michelin Man. Because actually it's way easier than it seems. So let's get started. Step number one, much like with any sort of item that you want to go out and restore, is the visual inspection and the overall condition of the item. You want to make sure that the flak that you want to repair and spend time and money on is in a condition that makes it worth your time, worth your effort, worth your money, and that you will be able to use it at an event without looking fucking stupid. I'm saying that because the seller had a variety of flaks in a variety of conditions. Some of them had patches all over the place. Some of them were painted over. Some of them were shot. Some of them were creatively modified. So make sure that the one that you're actually, getting or already have for this project checks out, and you will be able to use it at a reenacting event without looking funny. This one is honestly one of the best Okinawa ones I've seen. It's in really, really good shape. Zipper is great, all the snaps are there, and the shell is very healthy. Now, we can proceed to the second part of that visual inspection, which is making sure that the plate system, the pockets that hold the plates in place are still there. And we can already start doing that without opening the flak. We just need to make sure that there's two specific stitch lines that are still there. One here, that also extends out the back, as well as this one on the inside, which also goes all around. Those two rows will hold the plate systems at this height, which is the ones that you are mainly going to see when the flak is worn. So it is very important that those stitches are still there, as well as them being healthy and not pulled all the way out. So make sure that is already in place. Okay, so the vest passes the visual inspection. The shell is in good condition, it's a good fixer-upper, the stitches are still there, so we can safely assume that most of the plate system is still in there, so we can proceed to the, I would call the most daunting part of this project, which is actually opening up the vest and having a look inside to see what the condition of the pockets actually is. Now, we are hinging this whole project on those pockets still being usable. If they've been cut too short, if they're being completely ripped out, if someone's taken a lawnmower on the inside and it's all torn up, I'm sorry, but I'm not 100% sure how easy that is going to be to repair. This is not the second flak I repaired. This is not the third. It's actually the fourth flak I've repaired. I don't know if you guys remember Collector Nick's flak from fuck knows how long ago. One that got shot with a shotgun. The entirety of the insides was gone. For that one, I actually went out and made the pocket system and stitched it back inside of the vest. It was not fun. It was not worth it. It took me fucking ages. So for this to be a nice, easy, everyone can do project, we need those pockets to be in there. So we're actually gonna kind of come in a bit closer and start opening up the stitches and having a bit of a look. We can see that the bottom of the vest has been at one point torn open so they can access the plates and take everything out and then stick the foam back in, and then it's been sewn shut. You can see there's a couple lines of stitching here, as well as this one down here. Make sure the one stitch line you take care of and you remove is this one. I think they use like a bit of a bottle green thread, whereas the original thread is more like a khaki kind of brown colored thread. So just make sure you remove that one instead of this one. Personally, I'm going to use this old seam ripper that I've had for the longest time, so much so that the handle's broken, but it works just fine. So let's get to it and let's start opening this thing up. As you can see, this is not really tight, so it's actually pretty easy to remove, which is pretty nice. There may also be some thread for you to remove, both on this side as well as this side. Though I haven't really seen it on many Okinawan flags, I've mainly seen it on first and second patterns, but same rule applies. Just look out for any thread that looks weird and out of place, especially if it is bottle green, and especially if it has been very poorly done, and then remove it. Alright, so the bottom of the vest has been successfully unstitched, and now we can pull out the foam that they installed. There we go. Okay, there it is. That's the foam they replace the plates with, and now we can have a look inside of the vest. And fingers crossed, everything will still be in there. I can feel the anticipation building up, and I'm happy to say that all the pockets are there. All 23 of them. Again, this is a medium, so it would be 23. For a large one, you're looking at 25, and for an extra large, it would be 27 pockets. This is what I would expect most flags to look like on the inside. You can see the pockets have been cut through the bottom, so they can kind of, get access to the plates and get them out neatly. Some of them, however, are a bit rougher. For example, these ones, which are the ones that are directly on the back, they've been cut through the middle, which is a bit unfortunate. And instead of cutting them nicely on the bottom, but that's fine. We can fix that. There's also like a lot of thread that we need to cut out, but that's, again, probably we'll do that off camera. But yeah, no, that's great. This gives me hope that this will be a nice, simple, straightforward process. And we've confirmed that the pocket system is still there, so that concludes the inspection step. So we can move on to the next one, being the plates. Replicating the Doron plates is arguably the biggest challenge of this whole project, and I would argue is the one thing that stops most of us from actually repairing one of these vests. Unfortunately, finding originals is going to be pretty challenging, especially on their own, and if you do find them, they're likely going to be pretty expensive. So we need to find a suitable alternative. And I honestly think plexiglass may just be it. It's a hard material that will keep its shape inside of the vest and look correct. It's very easy to find. I mean, you can go online and you'll find businesses that laser cut plexiglass to size and they can ship it straight to your door, which makes it very easily accessible. And it's also relatively inexpensive. Additionally, you can also rework them and get them to look even closer to the original plates. So I think this can be a pretty good alternative. In terms of overall measurements, the plates are a square and each side should be 5.25 inches long. In terms of thickness, you want the plates to be at least 3 millimeters thick. The originals are about 3.2, which I've rounded it up to 3. I think these sheets only really come in millimeter increments, and going up to 4 may make them a bit too thick for the vest. In terms of color, you can get them in any color. I've just gone for ivory because I think it looks a bit closer to the originals. In total, I was looking at about $1 per plate, which isn't too bad. And I think shipped it was somewhere around the 30-odd mark. Some businesses will offer you additional services, like for example, rounding the corners of the plates, which would be nice, but of course that would come at an additional cost. I think in my case, they wanted like $8 extra per plate, which made them kind of unreasonable when I can just do that myself and make it a bit more of a budget-friendly project. So, to make your own plates, you will need enough plexiglass sheets to fill up your vest, a heat gun, and some sort of grinding tool like a Dremel. The first thing we're going to do to our plates is give them a slight bend, much like the originals. We can do that with just using a heat gun as well as bending it with our hands. It's not particularly hard, don't go crazy on the bend, a slight bend will be more than enough. We've successfully given all of our plates a slight curve. Now we can move on to the final stage, which is in my case, removing that rather sharp corner that these plates have. And I'm just gonna go out and use a Dremel. You can use any other kind of grinding tool, but that's all I've got, which means that it's gonna take me a while. But anyways, it is very important that these are well rounded and not pointy at all, because I'm sure, as you may have seen on original examples, it's not rare for the corners of the plates to end up kind of tearing through both the plate pocket and the shell due to friction. So yeah, make sure you round them well. And just like that, you've made yourself a whole set of reproduction Doron plates. And as you see, it's not rocket science. You just need to, put a bit of effort in, get the right materials, and it's a relatively straightforward job. Now, if you yourself have any other ideas of how to do this, do let me know. I'm always kind of eager to learn how to potentially make different plates with different materials. It's always pretty interesting. But anyways, now that we've gotten this done, we can move on to the next step, which is assembling the vest. Before we start putting the plates back into the vest, let's try to visualize what the internal plate layout actually looks like. Starting from the top, we have 3 plates at the back and 2 plates up front. Imagine this is where the zipper would be. Then we have 2 rows of 9 plates. 5 of those facing back. And 4 of those facing towards the front. And then, as you've likely figured, you would have another row of 9 with pretty much the exact same layout. 5 at the back, 4 at the front, and overlapping in this fashion, again with the zipper being right in the middle. Knowing this, I would always recommend that you start putting the plates from the top and slowly making your way down. Also, pay attention to these folds. You don't want there to be excessive tension the first time you fold it over out of fear of ripping or tearing something. Now that we know this, I think we can go ahead and start putting the plates back in. Now, I'm not going to sit here and, explain to you how to fit every single plate because I think that would get pretty boring and repetitive. There's not that much mystery to it. But I want to show you how I go about, filling most of these using the 3 upper back plates as an example. First of all, before we even start actually fitting in the plates, notice that these have a direction. They overlap in a specific way. You can see there's a bit of material here and there's a bit of material here. So now that we know that, we're going to start fitting them from right to left. So we've got our plates and we're just going to start fitting them. Again, we're making sure that we are fitting the plate in that fold from the pocket. The first one goes in pretty easily because there's not that much tension. Same thing we're going to do with the second one. Again, make sure you're putting the plate corner in that fold. It's a little awkward to do on camera, that's for sure. Okay, that's the second plate fitted. And then there's the last one, which again, not that deep. Cool, here we go. The 3 plates are now in place. And as you can see, they overlap in a very specific way. Now, the issue that we will have is that, of course, these have been cut pretty high. There's not enough material for you to just easily stitch it back together. So I like to do 2 things. Using some pretty heavy-duty linen thread, I like to start by securing the plate with some pretty simple zigzag stitches. Now, you can do more or you can do less. I've just found out that this tends to be more than enough to secure the plate in place. I'm going to go out and actually pull on it, and that is just not going anywhere. So that's pretty well secured for a start. Now that our plate is secured by the stitches, I like to go out and reinforce everything with just good old duct tape. I usually just make a bit of a loop from the back up into the front, which adds a bit of tension and makes sure the plate is at the right height. I appreciate this is not the most conventional way of fixing things, but it works surprisingly well, as I've tested with other vests. And just like that, our plate is secured in place. Although not the prettiest of setups, admittedly, I'm telling you that thing is not going anywhere. And even if the tape fails, you've still got the stitches underneath to keep it in place. All with the benefit of it being easily reversible. You just have to tear everything off and cut a couple simple stitches. I honestly think this is one of the most time and cost-efficient methods to install the plates. Although, as always, if you have any other ideas, do let me know. Now we just need to do the same thing with the other three. And just like that, we've successfully installed this whole row of plates. Now, you can do more, you can do less. I've actually gone away with only using tape, as long as the tape is good quality. But personally, knowing that some of these vests are going to get a bit more heavy use, I like to go with this stitching as well. Some of these flaks have had additional holes cut in the inside to be able to get access to the topmost pocket. Normally, the only way you get access to those is through the bottom, which is a bit annoying if you want to take the plates out. So yeah, kind of convenient. It's a bit easier to get into and a bit easier to put the plates back into those. The other side of the vest had pretty much the same cut, so sticking the plate back in was also pretty easy. And that's the two topmost plates already placed. If you're lucky, most of the pockets inside of your vest will look much the same to the ones that we've just filled up. However, there's a non-zero chance that they may also look like this, kind of just torn up a bit awkwardly. Now, repairing them is going to be a bit more challenging, but frankly not by that much. And we're going to start by just sewing these rather awkward cuts up. And there we go. That's that first tear all stitched up. Now, we don't want this to be exceedingly tight, because the tighter you make this, the harder it's going to be to stitch these up. And it doesn't have to be pretty, it just has to hold. Given that on these pockets we do have a fair bit of excess material here at the bottom, what I'm going to do to shut them up is I'm just going to get it, I'm going to fold it over, and then I'm going to stitch that to the bottom of the pocket, closing it up. And there we go. That's the bottom of the plate, nice and sewn up. And now, same old, which is going to go reinforce everything with a bit of tape. And again, the plate is now secured in place and shouldn't be going anywhere. Now we just need to do the same thing for the other ones. So we managed to stitch and reinforce all of these pockets, and this is the side that actually faces the outside of the vest. And you can tell that, frankly, that looks pretty good. I mean, the overall shape is correct, the curve is there, and again, this is way better than foam. So I would say this is a pretty good result. Now all you have to do is all the other ones, which is going to take a while, but I think it's going to be worth it. Quick note regarding the rows of 9, they're not actually a continuous row of 9 plates. They're actually 3 sets of 3 plates, which logically makes 9. Now, those sets of plates are actually tensioned and kind of held in place by these little elasticated straps that you will find either at the end or the start of each set of plates. And they're there just to kind of keep everything in tension and make sure the plates are overlapping correctly onto the previous or the next one. It's not rare for these to be cut or completely missing. Matter of fact, the ones on the other side of the vest are gone. But it's a relatively easy repair. You can find these kind of little straps at any kind of DIY store or sewing supply shop. But personally, I haven't seen that much of a difference with or without these straps. I'll just leave it down to you whether you want to replace them or not. It's an easy fix anyways. Also, whenever you're doing the first 3 or the last 3 from a set of 9, which would be the ones that are, directly on the side with 1 and 2, and then a third one down here, always start with the third one. Because if you fill these 2 first, it's going to have a crazy lot of tension and it's going to be really annoying to fit this plate back in. So again, start with this one and then do the other ones. Again, same thing with the other side. Start by the 7th plate and then do 8th and 9th. And this is what you should be left with after all that hard, monotonous work. I mean, I shouldn't have to tell you this, but this is a substantial improvement over just having foam inside of your vest. It just feels better. It's got a fair bit of weight to it now, which is always pretty nice. And just everything is where it should be. You've got the plates back in, and I would say that this actually looks really good. I mean, you can see the outline of the plates, the overall bulkiness of the vest. Now it doesn't look like a puffer coat or whatever. And I think this is pretty notable, especially on the back. I mean, you can see the overall outline of the lower plates, and the great thing is that given that we've gone out and used the original plate system, any sort of wear that the shell may have originally had from the original plates will actually match the new plates we've actually fitted in. This means that it makes it pretty hard for the average Joe to tell that this flak has had new plates fitted. So I would say that we've done it. The hardest part of the overall project is now completed. The last thing that we really have to do to wrap up the vest itself is to go out and, sew up the bottom of the vest, which is where we've, unstitched a bunch of stuff to get access to the plate system. And that is relatively easy anyways. But there is one more thing that I would encourage you to do before you seal up the bottom of the vest. And that is making sure that all the plates are solidly in place. And you can do that by just hanging it up for a while, shaking the vest like you would an infant child, going for a run with it, throwing it out of a window. The possibilities are truly endless. But anyways, yeah, just make sure that everything's solid in there before you start closing everything up. But once you've checked everything out and everything's good, you can just go in and, pretty easily just sew these flaps up. I usually go with a very simple stitch, nothing particularly heavy, simply because if I have to get back into the flak, I don't want to have to deal with a very tight thread and a very tight stitch. Do also keep in mind that the bottom of Okinawan flax is completely sewn shut, whereas on first and second patterns, it's actually open. It just has a couple of tacks every now and then. And much like the bottom, the side of the Okinawans is also sewn shut, whereas on first patterns and second patterns, much like I mentioned before, they are also open and they have a couple of tacks. Just do keep that in mind when you're repairing these so it looks correct. And just like that, we've done it. We have successfully repaired one of these ex-movie prop M1955 Flaks. And as you can see, it's been a pretty easy and simple process. So now that you know how to do it, you have no excuse to show up to an event with a flag that makes you look like the Michelin Man. But anyways, the feel of wearing the vest with the reproduction plates is honestly really close to an original. It feels just as bulky and awkward. And although they are technically a bit lighter than an original flak with the original plates, you may be looking at 700 grams or 1.5 pounds lighter than an original, is not something that I have felt when I have worn it. More so I feel it when I hold it with one hand, you know what I mean? I would say it's still a very good result in terms of both look and feel. In terms of the overall budget, you may be looking at somewhere between the 40 to 60 buck mark, and I'm saying up to 60 in case you also need to go out and buy a hot air gun or a Dremel. If you already have those, it's a pretty cheap and again, easy project to do. And if you combine them with the relatively affordable price of these vests, I think it's an excellent option for someone that may be on a budget or as a flak that you may want to buy just to go out and beat up. Again, I think these are very, very good. And the great thing is that you can do this to any other movie prop flak as long as the plate system is still in there, much like I've done with this other first pattern. And again, it looks really good and makes it for a great flak to actually go out and use at events. So all in all, I think this is, again, a great option and a pretty fun project. So yeah, I hope you guys have enjoyed it. If you have any questions, any requests, any other ideas or videos that you would like to see, do drop them below. I'm always reading your comments. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you find this helpful. If you give this a try, let me know how it went. And yeah, I'll see you guys in the next one.